Oh, oh, it's Huey. Huey's still being jealous. Oh my god, I'm sorry, Starlight. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm jealous. And it's so mysterious, and I'm trying to hide it even though it's so obvious because the writers are such juvenile delinquents. And Marvin did the same thing too with his wife. Oh! Well, the new season dropped, and everyone gobbled it up faster than a pit bull.
And what they say, God sends his tastiest children to his hungriest pit bulls.
I remember trying to watch this show a couple years ago before just giving up on it because of how absolutely trash it was. Like, forget any propaganda, the show just sucked. But yes, there is plenty of propaganda to go over. With that being said, let me just remind everyone before we get started that this video, as long as it already is, in no way encompasses every minute detail I would like to call out in the show. If I did do that, this video would be multiple hours long. While I will still be calling attention to many smaller details as well as larger themes, this is instead meant to bring light to the overall tactics and techniques they use, rather than be a laundry list of every cinema sin they committed. It is also meant to progressively reveal the underlying secret message the show is truly implanting into the minds of its audience. After our run-in with the race changes made for Invincible's adaptation, I found myself curious about what kind of politically correct changes were made in this one, as I already knew there must have been. Lo and behold, an entire Reddit thread of discussion on the matter found its way into my lap. Black Noir's alteration from a white man to a black man is especially funny to me. Not only is he actually white in the comics, he's a clone of Homelander meant to dispatch him if he ever goes rogue. The writers, however, still felt the need to change him to a black man. Why, you ask? Because black is in the name, stupid. And if we're not constantly reminding people of how little we care about the actual story and are only interested in mass brainwashing, how can we possibly hope to ruin the show?
Think, Mark!
Having the only black character go through that wouldn't look good. Duh. That's the point. The entire premise of the show is superheroes doing things that make them look bad, which contrasts with the halo effect projected onto them by the naive masses. But you already know that. You didn't complain about any of the things the unethical white superheroes were made to do. You only seem to have a problem that the black guy would also be made to look bad in ways that weren't justifiable from his perspective. These people don't give a single shit about the actual story, only that the unwritten rules of wokeism are being adhered to.
What is it? Supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies.
So in a story about superheroes being shitty people, only the straight white men are the real villains here. The non-whites and women are still somehow good guys. Oh, but the straight white men, those are the real bad guys. Those guys enjoy being evil. Everyone else is just forced to be shitty because, well, I don't know, but they're not actually bad people. Nobody would have to deal with issues like these if they would just pick good stories, damn it. I mean, even the source material is boring, and you certainly aren't going to fix it with your elementary school storytelling and dialogue, even aside from their tendency to saturate every square second of the story with politics. Not one time has anyone ever said, you know what would really step this up a notch? A woke overhaul. Switching things up to fit the current political climate isn't necessarily a bad thing. You're lucky I'm not Homelander, motherfucker. Leave it to Reddit users to pontificate about subjects well within the Overton window while pretending to abstract from it. I'd say it's time we dove in and took a look for ourselves. Before we do, however, make sure you're following me on Twitter, leave a like on the video, and let's get into it. Let's see here. Limptic, metrosexual, straight white male protagonist.
Hey, Gary. I really need to talk to you about
Later,
something.
kid.
Okay, cool.
Check. His girlfriend chastises him about what a pushover he is.
It was a crazy day, and he was super busy, but tomorrow, for sure, yes. Okay. What was I supposed to do? Was it kick his door down? Like Homelander?
I said okay.
Yeah, but he didn't mean it.
Check. She had to ask him out and is slowly growing to resent him for his impotence.
This is like when we started dating.
I don't think that's true.
Dude, I had to ask you out.
Check. Girlfriend goes on about how hard she's working in university to support the both of them.
I'm killing myself at school because I think it's gonna be worth it for both of us. You know, if we move in together.
check. And despite there being a painfully obvious lack of sexual tension or chemistry between them, just as in Venom, their characters are equipped with an arsenal of disingenuous, inauthentic lines because it seems nobody knows how to fucking write anything anymore. One thing to understand is liberal men are incredibly insecure when it comes to talking to women, being sexual with women, as well as just generally conveying their feelings authentically to anyone, but especially to women. That, combined with their pathological need to feign superiority and emotional maturity, is what leads them to write dialogue such as this.
Excuse me, sir? Hi. I'd like to make an appointment for you to come over and lay some cable.
Okay. Oh, Robin. Oh, dear Robin. That doesn't mean what you think it means.
Laying cable means sex.
No, laying pipe means sex. Laying cable means you want me to come over to your house and just take a big ol' shit.
That's disgusting.
Well, okay, but who said it though?
Okay, are you ready? Despite your best efforts, I'm actually still hungry.
Actually, more hungry now.
Where are we gonna go after all this
I don't
hot
know.
talk?
More importantly,
you know?
where are we gonna go to lay some cable afterwards? Jeez.
In their attempts at masking their social insufficiency, they write relationship dialogue in extremely vulgar, even jarring ways that would never realistically occur the way they envision them in their fantasies. Another knee-jerk behavioral byproduct of their mental illness is their tendency to compare anything trying to pass itself off as an official version of something to its porn counterpart. It's almost like one of their go-to flashcards for comedy.
What do I look like?
Like you're starring in a porn version of The Matrix.
Well, it's all right there in black and white.
Okay.
Every leftist piece of media organizes their propaganda differently. While some might focus on 2 or 3 main angles and center entire themes of their story around them, such as Invincible or Outlaw King, shows such as The Boys instead choose to pepper in moments of wokeness in between their dumpster fire of an actual plot. I assumed that would be the worst of it, but that was only before the underlying message was unveiled. Take when they walk into the secret bar, for example.
Capes for Christ guy? Preaches all that pray the gay away shit.
Leftists are guilty of every sin they accuse and cancel others for. That's why they cancel people. Just as they reject these things within themselves, so too must they suppress any external reminders of the naughty, unbrainwashed thoughts that pass through their own mind. This is why one of their favorite tactics to use in the media they produce is to portray their real-life opponents as hypocrites. Pay attention, and you'll very quickly start to notice just how often they write characters who are overtly opposed to homosexuality who end up being closet homosexuals. Here's another example of that peppering of propaganda from earlier.
Used to know this girl, and we used to go skating at Rockefeller, and I'd be on the side with this death grip on the rails. She would just charge headfirst into the middle of the rink, and she wasn't good. Like, she fell a lot, but she was never scared.
Another favorite technique of leftist writing is to have one of their prop characters give an anecdote, but one that dances to the tune of their puppet strings. This same technique was used in the Venom movie when the wife told her story about her mother. Most people are unable to imagine anything in terms other than linear paths and binary modes of operation. Even those who think themselves privy to propagandist strategies are blindsided by techniques such as these. When the propaganda is delivered in a new type of camouflage within a moment during the story when you've lowered your guard, even the most seasoned veterans can and will be caught lacking if they think they've already got it in the bag.
And she always used to say, just because you fall on your ass doesn't mean you have to stay there.
No, she didn't. Fuck you. You know, for being the creatives, leftists sure do lack in creativity. I mean, could you possibly have thought of anything more cliche than that? I feel like I'm watching a spoof of an actual hero show, but this isn't even a funny part, it's a serious part. And just for the hell of it, here's another one.
I just heard my mom's voice in my head. Keep smiling. The show must go on.
Well, yeah, is that what your mom said? Your mom used to say that? Give me a break. Another point I brought up in the Venom video that you are about to witness here is women's belief that they are the infallible arbiters of morality who must corral the men they are associated with like cattle. This particular device is not even a new one. For decades, straight white men in movies and shows have been shown as incompetent and in need of being taken care of, or being reined in by their girlfriends. And it's no different here. I've even spoken about this on my Twitter, where you should follow me, by the way.
Oh my God,
Turn that off. How many times do I have to tell you that A-Train needs to be scripted?
You're right. That incompetent nincompoop of a man needs to be managed by you feministic corporate women.
When he does not have a script, this is what happens.
I'm on it.
You women know so much better than us men. Even though a couple of snooty white women are looking down upon the black man's performance in front of the press, the reason the producers allowed this scene to be written this way is because the feminist narrative ranks higher than the diversity narrative on the leftist victim hierarchy. Don't let the left's insistence upon the abolishment of hierarchies and promises of an egalitarian society deceive you into thinking that they exist outside of them. They do just as much as anyone else. The difference is they exist and interact with the world from within party-assigned hierarchical classes rather than competence ones. This is appealing only to those who have been misinformed about the way their social structure works, or it appeals to those who exist on the bottom of the competence hierarchy. They get away with this by reinforcing the narrative that hierarchies are nothing more than the byproduct of a tyrannical, patriarchal social and economic system designed to keep those not born with certain privileges oppressed. Moreover, they reinforce the idea of narratives themselves, that only the narrative exists and that there is no such thing as organically occurring hierarchies. Soon afterwards, we are met with an increasingly common tactic in leftist media. Despite an obvious lack of sexual nature to this scene, it's still a subtle nod to the dynamic between white women and black men, bringing attention to the narrative they push so often these days.
Black Noir. We haven't properly met yet. I'm Starlight. I look forward to working with you.
The narrative of white women's supposedly unique interest in black men, and on the opposite end, black men's disinterest, and sometimes even annoyance, with white women's interest in them. Take note of this blonde, Barbie beauty pageant of a girl, which is frequently the archetype used in interracial propaganda, approaching the black man first, and his immediate disregard of her introduction. This is of course quite the opposite of the reality, and while nobody is denying certain preferences of every kind exist in small pockets, it isn't their natural inclination. And before anyone says it, yes, Black Noir is a mute character with a brain injury, but no, that doesn't disprove my point, especially since the audience doesn't know this yet. Now, since I already know some people might want to argue with me on this, I'll give you a brief explanation of a much longer script I'm writing on the psychology of interracial dating. While there are many easily explainable origins for such a preference, one of the main and really only reasons this dynamic is trending is because it is actually a subconscious obligation stemming from guilt, not a preference. And that's without even going into the propaganda occupying every corner of our media, both figuratively and literally.
No, but seriously, I can't even make this up. As I'm filming it, I have to pause, because look, right in the effects folder, a white woman and a black man standing right next to each other.
Contrary to the mainstream leftist narrative, this trend is nothing more than the result of growing up in a political and social climate of white guilt and shame. How frequently is the idea thrown around that whites should just give up their most valuable possessions and even their homes to non-whites? Well, when the only valuable commodity you possess is the hole between your legs, and you've been brainwashed into thinking you owe black people something simply for existing, you're gonna start considering those options. Makes perfect sense. This is what people mean when they say that sex is women's power. Sex is the currency women exchange with men for security and resources. Sex is how women swear loyalty to their man. That's why it's a way bigger hit to a man than it is to a woman when their partner cheats on them. That's why it's also such a big deal for a woman to preserve her virginity. The more men she has had sex with, which is to say, the more men she has sworn her loyalty to, the less trustworthy she is. The reality of this circus is that the leftist white women are catching themselves some arm candy for the sake of virtue signaling, not dissimilar to carrying around a chihuahua or other similar dog in their purse. I'm not here to kink shame or anything, but being a chihuahua, not really my thing. Although one might eventually come to expect chihuahua-like behaviors, especially from the stout white men of this show.
This is Trevor from Crime Analytics. So, we have exciting news for you.
No straight white man can ever be allowed the whole package of valuable traits unless, as we discussed in the video on Outlaw King, they have been assigned as an ally through the performance of obsequious acts towards victimized groups. Any valuable traits at all must be excluded from straight white male characters, unless it is, of course, a trait the liberal male writers see as valuable and wish to project themselves onto. It goes without saying, however, that if they do break this unwritten rule of leftist propaganda, they must debilitate themselves in an equally significant way. That is why the virtuous, straight white male characters of leftist media are always cut from the same cloth. Meek, pasty, and soft. But champions of women's rights, and ingratiating towards any of the left's other signature victimized groups. If he is good looking physically, he must be made into a villainous psychopath. If he is a good man, or an average man psychologically, he must not be allowed to physically dominate as well. Liberal men, due to their inherent weakness of character, along with their incapacity for personal accountability, see themselves as victims of an inherently flawed system. As a result, the only character trait they view as worthy of having is aligning themselves with other people at the bottom. The only reason such men find themselves currying the favor of public opinion is because of the current state of cultural hysteria in which we live. As much of a leftist tell as this scene is, it is quickly overshadowed by our next exhibit.
A crime itinerary?
Yep, where and when to find the bad guys. That's what my department does. We vet leads, crunch satellite data, CompStat. Better intel than the police.
Thanks, but I'm good. I like to do my own investigating.
In spite of her obvious enthusiasm at the upgrade in equipment when she first arrived,
Wow. God, I was working with a police scanner that I bought on eBay.
the reinforcement of her status as a puppet archetype must not be neglected at any point. So we will now completely disregard any previously established plot development that would have perfectly explained her excitement and even expectation of using their state-of-the-art investigation technology. Instead of comprising our characters and story of a realistic timeline of progression, we will now continue hammering feminist nails into the coffin of this show. Girls are only interested in enhancing the optics of women in the story in whatever way they can, regardless of whether or not these characteristics would realistically conflict with each other.
You know what I love about this view? It never gets old.
If that wasn't bad enough, we then learned that Madeline Stillwell recently had a baby and is using a breast pump to extract milk in her 50s.
Still going strong, huh?
Oh, yeah. I've just been pumping for 30 minutes and I got 1/4 of an ounce.
Hey, go easy on yourself. Come on now. Personally, I think it's amazing that a woman your age can have a baby, period.
That is so sweet of you to say.
Yes. How sweet of you to subliminally implant the hope of a happy, fertile, corporate single mom life for women even into their late 50s. So fertile, in fact, that they leak breast milk, as if to say she hardly even needed that breast pump because her breasts are producing so much damn milk already. I wonder how long it took for many of the women watching this to maybe even consider it an option. I was under the impression that dramatic health risks increased for babies born of mothers even as old as 30. That at some point, I would even lose my ability to have children well before my 50s. However, because I vicariously live my life through TV shows, and am too lazy, uninterested, and stupid to do any further research on the subject, I now believe it is possible to procrastinate growing out of my juvenile way of life and teenage mindset, and will prolong this era of endless hedonism well into my late 50s, since it doesn't matter anyway. While I doubt thoughts as well articulated as the way I just described them pass through the minds of women influenced by media such as this, that is most certainly the effect it has on them. Yet another example of the technique we brought up earlier rears its ugly head, and so soon too.
Madeline, I heard him. Through the wall. He was blackmailing you.
I am the last person you need to save.
Yeah, but I did it for you.
I know. But did the timing occur to you?
The way the scene is shot in this sequence of events during her phone call implies she is the one who ordered Homelander to take the plane down.
This Compound V. Any rumors you may have heard about my heroes? Libelous and completely untrue, but we all know how rumors spread, so I'd appreciate your discretion.
Of course. Yeah, my word.
Thank you. Have a safe flight home.
That's what everyone watching was thinking. Yet now we learn she apparently gave no such order, and that Homelander was just being overprotective, sticking his patriarchal little nose into places it didn't belong. They developed the plot in such a way as to reasonably suggest a pattern anyone with a functioning brain could follow. Then they take it back, acting as if none of that ever happened, so that her status as a perfect, flawless feminist who never makes mistakes or gets nervous and orders assassinations is preserved. But it doesn't stop there. I'll tell you guys why her mannerisms were written in such a way as to imply her involvement in Homelander shooting the plane down, even in spite of how the writers try to take it back. That too was a feminist insert meant for reinforcing her position as a tactical genius while remaining steadfast in the face of the patriarchy trying to bring her down. If she were to be outsmarted by a man and made to doubt her own intelligence and competence as a result, this would defile the impeccable feminist persona she is supposed to embody. It would mean the omnipresent, intangible patriarchy would have succeeded in putting a chink in her feminist armor, and we certainly can't have that. So they just took it right back the next episode. She's still imprinted as a tactical genius in the audience's minds, but has now removed from her record that she was made nervous enough to order an assassination at the hands of a man who outplayed her. And of course, later on, we are blessed with a girl boss fight scene where she beats up some men trying to rape a woman. I'm going to go more into detail on the topic of female superpowers later down the line with Maeve, so stay tuned for now. A couple marketing faggots pretend to deliberate between themselves over who should start first, as if I couldn't have guessed based on the entangled puppet strings so carelessly dangling above each and every character in this show that they had already chosen the black guy to speak first.
Gentlemen.
Okay. Now.
This same duo for marketing is shown at multiple points throughout the show, and at every point, the black guy is given the first word and most of the words. I mean, it's one thing to include it at all, but to disingenuously have the characters pretend this minor action wasn't pre-decided just adds insult to injury. Leftist propaganda wouldn't be so irritating if its authors weren't such dim-witted amateurs whose arrogance and pretentiousness oozed from between the lines of each and every scene they wrote. Look, I don't give a shit that a black guy spoke before a white guy. What I do care about is the fact that this show was a propagandist production from the very beginning. Even that scene, as small as it might be, is a part of the peppering of propaganda that we established as a theme in the beginning of this video. This entire scene, in fact, is framed perfectly from the perspective of the leftist narrative they seem incapable of omitting from a single moment of their work.
You're wrong. It's totally you. It's bold, it's brave, it's feminist.
How is that feminist?
Empowering.
Everything about the way this plays out tells me the writers wanted to make this about oblivious men mansplaining to a woman about things the left routinely says men know nothing about.
How exactly do you know what I'm going through? Exactly.
Nice line, dumbass. Oh, but Nuance, that's how the comic was written too. Well, if that's true, then I guess the comic is a piece of leftist garbage too. People seem to think that only dramatic changes in the race of certain characters or other overt, glaring changes count as propaganda, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, if you've watched the show, then at this point, you might be wondering how I can still call this scene propaganda when the oppressive boss in the room is a woman. This is because women are either portrayed as victims, or they're portrayed as confident, strategic girl bosses with an emphasis on their uncaring attitude towards the opinions of others, since that is much more likely to be a weakness for them realistically. As I said in the Turning Red video, in their mind, the license to bullshit is almost owed to them for the sake of what they view as reparation for years of oppression. Any sins committed by the left's assigned victimized groups are to be excused on account of their ideological hall pass. Coming back to our discussion of interracial dating, A-Train, as the only black man in the Seven, is of course dating a white woman. Pay attention to how often you see that black man and white woman combo in media. Because, spoiler alert, it's certainly not for the sake of some virtuous diversity agenda.
Hey Train, how you celebrating tonight? Any special girl?
Well, you know me. I'm always in the game, but I'm too fast to catch.
A-Train and Popclaw's dysfunctional relationship is an ever-present reminder of the true motives for this specific type of interracial relationship. Both parties are nothing more than chihuahuas in each other's purses. For black men, a status symbol. For white women, a virtue signal. Huey opens the woman's computer and is taken aback by her desktop background. Now, what would have been easily explained before as his PTSD with regard to A-Train can now only be attributed to some sort of subliminal cuckoldry after the black guy says this.
You know I fucked that all day?
Huey was shown getting over his PTSD already, so this is either shitty writing or it's some sort of subtle cuckoldry joke. I wouldn't put either of the two possibilities past this show. Returning to our conversation about female superpowers, can't even fucking remember if I've mentioned this already or not, but another cornerstone of leftist propaganda is the inclusion of girl boss scenes like this one, where she absolutely annihilates men who in the real world would snap her in half with their fingers. Oh, but Nuance, she does have superpowers. Yes, and that is precisely why this device works so well. It is used in conjunction with a moment where anyone calling out such a scene would be ridiculed for not suspending their disbelief. Honestly, it's a brilliant technique. They get to gaslight anyone who would dare question this scene because of its seemingly shallow depth. It would just be plain silly to question a scene about a woman with indefinable superpowers easily beating up multiple men 2.5 times her body weight, wouldn't it? Well, that's just the point now, isn't it? Leftists relish the use of fantastical themes in media because it gives them an excuse to hide their puppet strings in plain sight. This type of subliminal messaging succeeds at undermining the well-established foundations of social culture in its audience. Superpowers are the cheat code leftists use to bypass your conscious defenses. I don't think it would be invalid to assert that left-leaning writing carries with it a synonymity with illiterate writing. There's quite a disconnect between most people's understanding of attempts at artistic endeavors and successful artistic endeavors. And I don't mean successful as in having made a lot of money or garnered a mob of mouth-breathing fans. I mean successful as in functional. This disconnect is unfortunately often the most prevalent in those who create such works. They seem to think that because it is their work of fiction, they can jerk it any which way they want, and because art is subjective, they're not obligated to follow any unwritten rules or guiding principles. In fact, they unashamedly ignore such rules, not breaking them with deliberation and precision, but instead like a bull in a china shop. Even worse, however, is that precisely because of their illiteracy, after haphazardly smashing their oversized ego against every writing convention known to man, they strut about as if they have succeeded. The writers know nothing about cliches or what makes them work, but more importantly, they simply don't care. They have no respect for the art of stories, and so they just throw a bunch of cliches in a blender and call it a day. In reality, no superpowers, no matter how indefinable or fantastic, are an excuse for partisan, fourth wall breaking inserts from the authors, and it is amateurish to use them in such a way. However, because of how illiterate the general public is, even including most college graduates, as well as how politically saturated every square inch of our media has become in this day and age, the vast majority of audiences either don't notice, or they aren't confident enough in their own literacy to challenge what they do notice. The gaslighting works on most people, pressuring them instead to suppress their gut feeling and not rock the boat for fear of being criticized for reaching. Another way they maintain this facade of female infallibility and unflinching virtuousness while simultaneously perpetuating the narrative of straight white male malevolence or spinelessness is by putting a powerful female character and a powerful male character in an impossible situation together. The catch is that only the male character has the power to successfully save the situation.
Don't die with them.
Tragically, the superpowered female character, while still being powerful and virtuous, is stuck under the thumb of the unethical, superpowered, straight white male character. So far, not a single reputation of any of the female heroes has been tarnished by their own immorality. If you're wondering about Stillwell's reputation, let me remind everyone and emphasize that there are two sides to the feminist coin. There's a victim side, and there is a girl boss side. And even the girl boss might be implicitly victimized by the corporation, even if she's not victimized by any particular character. This next technique is super fucking wild, and although not always, in this case it lends itself to the feminist narrative of patriarchal oppression. I also noticed it used in the Invincible comic, not the Invincible show, the Invincible comic and the Venom movie. This signature move of amateurish writing begins when the authors insert an entire scene or build up to a scene using a jumbled, confusing mess of events to get them there because they have a specific personal fantasy they want to include in their work. In this particular case, the author's fantasy was to go on a date with a girl, period. But on this date, they fantasized about specifically going to a bowling alley or maybe some other skill-based activity that she was secretly better than him at. They then fantasized that she would hold back because of some gender-specific trauma or brainwashing from her past, telling her not to upstage boys on a date.
Want to know how Sean thanked me?
No.
He never spoke to me again. Not one word. And that's when I learned, never show your strengths to a boy you like.
So that they, as the good men, could step in and say,
"You want to quit stroking my ego and show me what you really got?"
Thus setting them apart from the bad men in her eyes and winning her heart. At least, that's how this plays out in their head. And we mustn't forget to end it off with the cherry.
Well, to be honest, Sean Jakowski had a tiny little baby dick.
Beautiful setup, marvelous execution.
Finally, some good fucking food.
The blatant hypocrisy, the lack of self-awareness, lack of genuine connection, lack of sexual tension, the double standards. Chef's kiss. This is textbook liberal projection and nice guy syndrome behavior. And I implore all of you to keep your eyes peeled for more scenes like these in shows because they happen pretty often. Another common characteristic of men with nice guy syndrome is the misunderstanding that it makes them emotionally mature to be able to sit there and listen to her talk about other men.
Cross-country team. It's such a huge crush on him. And he finally asked me out to this party.
They fantasize about the girl they're dating gushing about him to her friends as the emotionally intelligent guy who is mature enough to listen to her drone on about old crushes and ex-boyfriends. This is yet another way in which they try setting themselves apart from the other men. It's also a tell for whether or not they've ever actually had success with women. If they had, they'd know that making it clear to her that you're not actually interested in hearing her complain about men actually increases her affinity for you. If it doesn't, well, you don't want to be dating that type of girl. Funny enough though, one of the most common complaints about men that I hear from women is that at some point during the date, the man started complaining about his ex-girlfriend or something similar. Anyone who's ever been romantically involved with a woman in their life, or at least paid attention to what they say, would know this too. Yet so many men seem to think it doesn't apply the other way around. That in order to avoid showing your toxic masculinity, you as the man are obligated to listen to her bitch and moan about her ex-boyfriends. When the real emotionally intelligent thing to do would be to set that boundary and tell her, hey, I don't actually want to hear about any of your old crushes or ex-boyfriends. But again, because none of these types of men have ever actually interacted with a woman, much less maintained a healthy romantic relationship with one, they write their protagonists and romantic scenes this way as a form of self-deception. They create these fake situations, and because other people are acting out their script, it makes it real to them. This feels like something straight out of a Black Mirror episode.
So I stepped in. I kicked the guy's ass.
Good for you.
And in case it wasn't already obvious what the message they were trying to convey was, they made sure to spend even more time harping on it after the fact.
Does it bother you that I could whip your ass in bowling and in everything and bench press you?
To shut the fuck up!
God, is that a threat or a promise?
Shut
I really think it's awesome.
the fuck
Really you.
up!
One thing we haven't yet discussed in this video is the show's heavily anti-Christian sentiment. But believe me, that's only because there was so much other ground to cover beforehand. It's actually one of the most prevalent themes in the entire show, and it ties into the largest underlying narrative of all. But we'll get to that later. Judging from the fact that one of the world's largest corporations in the show promotes Christian values and national patriotism, along with how often the show tries to portray these things as negatives, I'd have to guess that this is a less degenerative version of the real United States. Can I live there instead, please? Have no fear, however, Homelander is here to save us from it all.
Why, you gonna run off and play strong, single mom? Please. That baby is an accessory.
Holy shit! Part of the feminist narrative in this series ties into yet another not-so-subtle subliminal theme that women, especially white women, are all secretly gay. That they only date men because that is what is socially expected, and if they could help it, they would all be lesbians. Years ago, I also believed this falsehood, but after expanding my horizons a bit, and learning more about lesbians and bisexual women in particular, I was surprised to find out that it is actually the other way around. Women fucking hate dating other women. They hate everything about it. They hate how stuck up other women are, they hate being treated disposably, they hate women's lack of gratitude, their lack of initiative, not to mention their entitlement, and we've hardly scratched the surface. Here's a fun little fact for you. Did you guys know that lesbian couples have the highest reported amount of domestic abuse? But in Hollywood land, homosexual relationships are almost always portrayed as the perfect solution to an unsatisfied love life, as a liberation of sexual frustration that you didn't even know you had because those tyrannical Christians made you suppress it. But we won't hover around the subject long because the story whips us right back to its familiar rhythms.
So what are we drinking, new to town Annie?
In a real-world scenario, I don't doubt for a second that a more charismatic guy would easily swoop in and steal Annie's attention away from this fucking loser. Nonetheless, if you can't tell that everything about this scene of events can be compared to a glass Trojan horse, you're just an idiot.
Clint Eastwood stare like, and then bam, runs like Forrest Gump runs. 5 blocks down into a pet store where he hides behind this jumbo bag of kibbles and bits for 4 hours.
Oh.
I'll be right back.
Surprised to run into you here, man.
Yeah, same goes for you.
Am I supposed to assume from this that the black guy didn't actually care about the girl's attention? Because if that's the case, what was the point of getting all up on her? Giggling about, showing Huey jealous, having the black guy's attention abruptly change from Huey, who the writers are pretending to have the black guy care about, to the girl he's never met when they're obviously on a date? And rather than interrupting and saying something like, "Hey bud, I'll talk to you later, we're in the middle of a date," Huey just pouts off and leaves her there. Oh wait, I forgot. The liberal writers are still on their "it's not a date, we're just friends" bullshit because they think it's emotionally intelligent not to state their intentions or set boundaries. And after all of that, the scene just continues its charade of pretend friendship and concern from the black guy. What an absolute dumpster fire. There's not even a word for how bad this whole thing is. I'd rather just strangle whoever wrote it. Starlight specifically is a character routinely finding herself at the mercy of forces she complains are greater than her, and at no point in the entire show takes accountability for her own life decisions.
Dozens of people in this company spent hundreds of hours to create the thing that is you.
I never asked for that.
Then why don't you burn the sparkly outfit and become a cop?
I'm gonna have to agree with Stillwell on this one. I mean, didn't the fact that you were coerced into giving a blowjob to another member of the team on your first day alert you to the fact that it was full of opportunistic predators who would prioritize your needs far less than those of the company? But no, women in their infinite wisdom, rather than simply leaving toxic situations, instead decide to stay and complain about them. Starlight has to be dragged tooth and nail by her handlers to do the job she will not leave, yet so vehemently disapproves of. Whether it's a boyfriend or a job, you can count on women pointing the finger at an authority figure as an eternal scapegoat for their avoidance of personal accountability. This show's bountiful array of god-awful lines, however, are shared by more characters than just Starlight.
You know, you're always calling people cunts or twats, but I never really got how that's an insult. They're flexible, take a pounding, and they're the reason behind like 98% of my life decisions.
During the ending episodes of Season 1, it is finally revealed why Butcher's wife has been missing this whole time in a flashback to the dinner party where she met Homelander.
Your brilliant wife here did all the work. She posted my photos, she wrote my messages, it was exceptional.
All right. So they thought it was you up there, but it was really Becca. Bit deceptive, isn't it?
No, Billy, that's what we do because Homelander's busy saving lives.
It's okay, it's okay. You're right. It's a little dishonest, but I'm all thumbs when it comes to that kind of stuff, so leave it to the experts.
Flattery only works on women who have determined that the man flattering them exists on a rung of the social ladder that is immeasurably higher than theirs. Either that, or their self-esteem is so low that they'll take anyone who brings them back to baseline. The fact that Homelander is spending so much time complimenting her intelligence is also a tell for the type of game liberal men think players use to steal women right out from underneath their husbands' noses. Since surface-level flattery and ingratiation is the only type of behavior that occurs to liberal men in the presence of women, the step-by-step logic is that a player must be someone who overstimulates women with compliments from a position of higher social status. Women seem to get mad when men try to woo them with flattery about their appearance. I'll compliment her big brains instead. That's exactly what's going through their minds. Even if that scene was written by a woman, it doesn't disprove this point. Women especially don't have the first clue about how they like to be seduced by men. Their first and only thought is, well, I think I'm pretty smart, so I'd like it if that's how a man approached me. Utterly brain dead.
But why'd you bring me to a hotel? Not your place.
Don't even fucking listen to that. Girls love hotels, and they especially love hooking up in hotels. Maybe it's something about the environment that adds to the mysterious thrill of hooking up with a stranger. Who even knows? But they love it, so just toss any reservations about that aside.
He is just a man, and by the looks of it, not much of one.
Yeah! Fuck that guy! Finally, some common sense up in here.
I know that you want to make this whole deep thing and all the single ladies moment power, right?
You just gotta love Homelander. But I can't say the same for Billy Butcher. Come to find out, his wife wasn't raped. She cheated on him and was impregnated with Homelander's baby. Yeah. I'm not sure why such a strong theme in this show is cuckoldry. Actually, I am sure. I just hate that the reason is nothing more than uninspired liberal writing. And because it falls in line with the leftist narrative, emasculating and putting straight white men down, they get the green light. Homelander meets Butcher in Stillwell's home and rubs into Butcher's face how great of a time his wife had with him.
She came 3 times, eh? 3 times.
Only 3 times in 3 hours? Oh, that's right. This show is written by beta males who think that sounds like a lot. How cute. On a more serious note, this is actually another clue to distilling the truth from the muddiness of this storyline. Homelander isn't known for lying within the confines of private conversations. One of the hallmarks of his character, in fact, is his propensity for unleashing his brutally honest, genuine feelings during them. There's no reason for him to be lying about the wife's reactions during their time together. Keep this in mind later in the video when we address how the writers try to pretend she was raped. For now, check out this next clip, because it's an increasingly common leftist talking point that I haven't gotten to address yet.
Do this. And now you're just another useless fucking blind guy.
What made you think I would ever allow a cripple into the 7?
You know, when I first heard the word ableist, I was awfully confused. After more exposures, I concluded that this new type of ammunition for the left's go-to name-calling tactics was an attempt to normalize the acceptance of an increasing demographic of disfigured people. Without digressing too far, one of the reasons for this might be because it is a globalist psyop for a post-vaccinated world. Who knows what type of effects these experimental vaccines will have on future generations? Funny enough, Homelander's refusal to allow a cripple onto the world's top superhero team is supposed to paint him as the bad guy, even despite the fact that he just easily exploited Blindspot's weakness. Imagine a world where something akin to the Justice League or the Avengers really did exist, and rather than picking the strongest heroes, the criteria for making the League was if your demographics fell into the politically correct narrative. Terrifying, I know, but that's what's happening here. The writers know that that's what's happening, but rather than implying that she, as a soulless corporate zombie, is the one in the wrong, this scene is used to increase the audience's dread of Homelander. And so is the next clip.
Saving America? Can I get a show of hands?
Okay, how about saving the world? Wow, unanimous, strong reaction. So what is it about?
Nope. It's saving America.
The writers would like Homelander, and spoiler alert, any and all other patriots, to be seen as brainwashed, belligerent bullies. The left sees it as the United States' responsibility to encompass cultures from all corners of the globe, no matter how tense or hostile the relations of our inhabitants may be. This same sentiment doesn't extend itself to non-white countries, of course, but that's only because, you're racist. All jokes aside though, we are beginning to witness the unraveling of the true hidden plot.
God is watching over you every second. You know, I thought that he was watching us, and I thought that he'd be upset.
Yeah, it's a messed up thing to tell a kid.
Yeah, but looking back, should have made out with Big Game.
Right, of course. That's the lesson to be learned here.
There is nothing up there. It's all just lies.
One of the show's most effective underlying narratives is the comparison between superheroes and God. The fact that Vought, a multi-billion-dollar corporation not dissimilar to an institution like the church, insists upon the lie that their superheroes are chosen by God, while also occupying a role as a religious Christian influence, all serve to aid the globalist agenda of nihilistic atheism, further driving the world into anarchy. Vought's lie of their superheroes being chosen by God is a direct parallel of the atheistic sentiment towards the church. That God is a lie perpetuated by the church in order to keep the masses subjugated and themselves in power. While some parts of that are kinda true, any and all religious or spiritual morality or purpose is lost on atheists.
Religion, as well as atheism, both are beginner levels that you have to grow out of, and that you will naturally grow out of if you are diving into those more uncomfortable topics and asking the questions and not being satisfied with the answers that you receive to the questions that you are currently asking.
Atheists actually prefer to remain agnostic. It's not a statement about where their beliefs currently lie, it's an excuse for not progressing along their path. Delving back into your spirituality after splitting from it requires a great deal of patience and courage as you sift through the trauma that caused you to part ways with your inner essence in the first place. There is also a great deal of arrogance intertwined with atheism that must be let go of in order to move forward. They like to think of themselves as more intelligent, logical, and emotionally stable than religious people. They like to think of themselves as having overcome the emotional erraticism that they would assert causes people to be religious in the first place. Although, as anyone who has ever gotten into an argument with an atheist will tell you, they're probably some of the most emotionally volatile types of people. It is precisely because of their refusal to delve into their emotional trauma that they behave this way. Moving forward, we are greeted with yet another delightful dose of girl power, and it's not even delivered by a girl.
But I'm saying this for her, kid. You're putting her in danger. Homelander finds out that she's been talking to you, she's fucked. The deeper you keep pushing her into this thing, the deeper in the meat grinder she goes.
Feminists will incessantly criticize men for trying to protect women, while simultaneously screaming about men not taking women seriously enough to involve them in things that are traditionally handled by men. Starlight has had every opportunity to bail from Huey's operation, but chooses to continue helping out of her own free will. Effeminate, brainwashed men and feminists, however, absolve women of the consequences of their actions regardless of the degree to which they are involved. From the other side of their mouth, though, to those same men who white knight for women, like what Marvin is doing, they also scold for being misogynistic. The only difference between when these bipolar reactions are dished out is how convenient it is in the moment for the woman. Fucking insane. I know. Later on, we're introduced to the company's CEO, Stan Edgar, in an argument between him and Homelander. While on the surface appearing to be a debate during which Edgar corrects Homelander about what type of company Vought is and where it truly derives its income, this conversation is actually an undercover reprimanding of everything Homelander represents. That's all I'm going to say for now, because there's a much more impactful interaction between the two of them later on. Homelander goes to visit his son, along with the monkey-branching whore who birthed him, but is greeted with a less than friendly welcome.
We thought it was best that he have as ordinary of a childhood as possible.
We? Who's we?
Look, I just want my kid to be normal.
What's got y'all wound up, sweetheart? You sure didn't mind throwing your life out the window for a night in bed with Homelander. And you really gotta love how women talk about the child they had, even in front of and to the father of said child, as my kid. Really just goes to show how many women view their children as accessories rather than human beings. But of course, that would never be the focus of any subliminal message, because it would violate the unwritten rules of female infallibility. The female infallibility of this show is so strong, in fact, that it unintentionally breaks the fourth wall. Weirdly enough, the Seven's newest recruit seems to take a jab right at the authors of this show without even knowing it.
You write all women as either unknowable Hitchcock bitches or Michael Bay fuck dolls. I mean, I get that a lifetime of jerking off to Transformers didn't exactly make you popular with the ladies, but a little effort would be nice.
I've also been avoiding bringing this woman up because of how revolting her character is, but another common characteristic of the type of demographic that comprises the left are, to put it bluntly, socially autistic women. This particular brand of person, whether male or female, although it manifests itself differently in each gender, tries to compensate for their lack of social intelligence by essentially blurting out the first unrefined impressions that occur to them about their immediate surroundings or the people they're talking to. This is typically a byproduct of childhood trauma where the person never learned how to properly socialize. This type of person tends to believe that the only way to be honest with someone is to say the most rude thing they can possibly think of, when really it's just because they don't know how to articulate themselves. These people also tend to believe that corrupted institutions like governments or companies could be toppled if only they would allow one socially inept person who's in the know to run wild and blurt out all the dirty little secrets they've learned. It goes without saying that these issues are much more complex than that. Butcher finally reunites with his whore wife, and it is still unclear, as far as the story is concerned, whether she was raped or if that's just her bullshit excuse for the one-night stand with Homelander. Even after some online research, it's still not quite clear what happened in the Amazon version of the story. In the comics, it's an entirely different, unambiguous rape, and the baby itself kills her. Amazon's version is much muddier though. Nothing about this though would be hard to figure out if the show itself wasn't a flaming pile of shit. But because the writers are such cuckolds, everything about her appearance points to an affair. I mean that, along with how frequently the cuckoldry theme is expressed throughout the entire show, how could you say otherwise? She mentions at a couple points later that Homelander raped her, but just as they portrayed Stillwell as the mastermind who gave Homelander the order to shoot the government official's plane down, and then took it back the very next episode with dialogue, the same issue is happening here. Additionally, in case you haven't already figured this out, this too is another fantasy of the liberal male writers. Get this, they actually fantasize about their girlfriend having an affair with a higher status man, becoming impregnated, regretting it later, and then them having the emotional maturity to take her back and care for her child. It's that same fantasy from earlier about wanting to be acknowledged as the emotionally mature boyfriend. They think of the epitome situation in which a man would typically leave his girlfriend, and in their codependent, cuckolded, nice guy syndrome days, bend and break their characters in a way that rewards them for doing the emotionally unintelligent thing and taking her back wholeheartedly. It really is impressive just how many mental gymnastics it takes to believe this shit. No wonder they're always rioting. The wife is routinely shown behaving with hostility towards Homelander, and if you're a little chode faggot, you probably think that's proof she never consensually had sex with him. However, a woman's hostile behavior towards you after having sex with her, especially if her decision to have sex with you was one she shouldn't have made, is in no way indicative of anything you did. So to me, her hostility isn't actually proof of whether or not Homelander actually raped her. Although I'm sure that's what the show would prefer everyone believe. Look guys, the real answer here is that it's simply horrible writing. That's all there is to it. These fucking loser writers could not think of anything other than cuckoldry for this Billy Butcher character, and this incoherent mess is how it played out because they're just that incompetent. I know, it's pretty pathetic. So now we're sentenced to watching Butcher have to break out Homelander's bastard son simultaneously with his two-timing wife because she can't let him go.
You're gonna like him.
Not only that, but now we have to sit and listen to him build a pretty little pedestal for her.
What was I before you? Nothing. And you saved me. And here you've been, fucking living in this shithole for all this time, and I haven't been here for you. I'm gonna make it up to you. I'm gonna make it up to you from now to the day I die, I swear to God.
I don't care what kind of retconning the authors want to try to do to repair their fractured storyline. None of that matters. It doesn't count. The only thing that counts is what you show in your show. You don't get to tell an entirely different story after having shown it. She was shown having cheated on Butcher, so that's what fucking happened. I really don't give a shit about what anybody else wants to put in the author's mouths. It doesn't count. Now this next clip isn't exactly propaganda, but just watch.
Oh my god! That was so good. That was really good. I enjoyed that.
It's harder than it looks.
I'm on the verge of tears. There is not a single alternate reality in which this guy gets laid by this girl. But that's not the worst of it.
Let's talk hashtag heroes so white. The numbers are rather startling. 92% of heroes are Caucasian, African American, 6%, Latin and Asian, each 1%. Why doesn't Vought want diversity?
Bart wasn't about to let this one black man put his foot on their necks.
A little black girl
accusing a white superhero of murder in these parts?
Don't even get me started on the egregious moments of hypocrisy throughout the script.
Queen Maeve, a goddess, but our Empress of the Otherworld struggles inside.
Questions of identity rock her to her core until she meets...
Elena. The connection is immediate, all-consuming. A sweet, sapphic love blossoms, raising Maeve's consciousness and revealing her own inner truth.
She's gay, and it's okay. It's...
powerful. She's more than just a superhero now. She is a symbol. Representation matters.
She's #Brave Maeve.
We're recommending a multi-pronged image makeover. First, guest spots on Queer Eye.
Then an exclusive It Gets Better PSA.
Kimberly Pierce might direct.
Grand marshals at the New York and Chicago Pride because you are two proud lesbians.
You know Maeve is bi, right?
Yeah, you know what? I just feel like lesbian is a bit of an easier sell, but more cut and dry.
Now, for Elena...
Me.
You're gonna love it. Yeah.
Why am I part of the show?
We are going with a polished, tailored look.
That looks like menswear.
Pew research shows that two feminine women in a relationship sends a problematic message.
Yeah, this isn't Penthouse Forum.
Americans are more accepting of gays when they're in a clear-cut gender role relationship, like Ellen and Portia.
They consistently make fun of leftist corporate agendas, like fake diversity and forcing homosexual couples into things unnaturally, yet the show itself is the very embodiment of everything they are making fun of. It's just such a fourth wall shattering mindfuck. It's like, don't you people realize that's you? I'm having a hard time believing anyone could possibly be this delusional. But this is why leftism is a mental illness. It fragments the mind to the point where there is no coherent train of thought anymore. The only hierarchy that exists within leftism is victimhood. And so the only way to be taken more seriously, or to be given more attention, is to be more of a victim. To fragment your mind to the point that your faulty logic comes full circle and you end up gaslighting yourself. I'm not even kidding when I say that these people belong in a mental hospital. Remember when I emphasized how uninspired they were? They can't even think of their own fucking mutants. This is just a Walmart version of 11 from Stranger Things. Not that that show's any good either, but I'll save that for another time. Finally, the serpent rears its ugly head at last.
We are in a war for the culture. The other races are grinding us down and taking what is rightfully ours, but we can fight back.
The poorly veiled metaphorical booby trap that I presented to all of you in the beginning. That Homelander is the very embodiment of everything the left hates and fears. Proud, nationalistic, traditional Americans, especially those of European descent. The very idea of a white homeland must be so utterly obliterated from the minds of European Americans that even your biological inclinations invoke a sense of embarrassment and shame. That is precisely why Homelander's character must be smeared and made fun of at every turn. He must be made into a man-child, because that same feeling is what they want to implant into the subconscious minds of their white audience members, should they ever find their thoughts drifting in that direction. This scene directly ties into Stan Edgar's interaction with Homelander from earlier, as well as the one coming up that we will discuss. Stormfront's rant is not only meant to liken nationalism to Nazism, it's also a subtle, mischievous nod of mockery aimed towards race replacement theory, a verifiable and proven undercover plan to displace the white population in the United States. Leftists praise and encourage any and all overt efforts to replace whites in positions of power, social status, social hierarchy, or just general population, while simultaneously scolding and gaslighting those who would call it out for what it is, or suggest that there will be negative consequences for doing so. Their fragmentation knows no bounds.
There are illegal immigrants pouring into this country every day, and any one of them could be a super terrorist.
I suppose this could be some sort of throwback to President Bush's days, lying about weapons of mass destruction in Afghanistan, along with fear-mongering about terrorists to justify the plethora of constitutional violations he committed. What it most definitely is a throwback to, though, is Trump's iconic speech.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Like we discussed earlier, the left would liken anyone with spine enough to stand up for their national sovereignty to a Nazi.
Or what some super villain loving snowflake has. Every minute we waste, one super terrorist has already got through. More will come.
It's 1:45.
And I mean, for all we know, these maniacs could have already flown over our borders and be standing
You all right,
next
pal?
to you
right now, just waiting for
Yeah.
their chance to kill us all. Keep America safe again.
You know what's funny is that there are people who would say I'm reaching, even when Stormfront, the Nazi white supremacist of the show, re-raps Trump's fucking campaign slogan, Make America Great Again, as keeping America safe again. I also need to point out to everyone that in case you have not seen the show, the clips I've just shown are rapid fired at you in a montage-like sequence of events. What's one of the most recognizable signs that someone is being brainwashed in a movie? It's when they're strapped to a chair, unable to look away from a screen, while information flies at them faster than they can consciously digest each little piece individually. The audience is forced to resort to allotting their opinions about everything they are being shown to what the story has designated as that subject's role. While obviously not identical, the criteria for what most people would recognize as a stereotypical scenario for brainwashing is reached right in your very room. Whether it's your TV, your computer screen, or worst of all, your phone, you're strapped in and blasting your brain with outside information, completely oblivious to the way it is changing you. As far as Stormfront is concerned, your brain automatically routes everything she is saying to the story's moral designation for her character: Nazism, oppression, and tyranny. And of course, the extra playing the average white man walks into his convenience store and shoots the Arabic cashier working there, despite the fact that Stormfront herself still has not publicly specified any other races or encouraged any kind of action against them. But people will still say I'm reaching. I'm not even done, because no argument against liberal hypocrisy is complete without bringing up 2020. There are no words to describe the lunacy that transpired ever since the very beginning of the pandemic. Yet at every turn, they try to change the narrative to be one of right-wing brainwashing, right-wing censorship, and left-wing victimhood. I've already spent enough time stewing over that bit of craziness, so let's just continue. Huey is made to watch after Lamplighter while the rest of the team go on a mission. Lamplighter is apparently addicted to porn, so naturally, because random raunchiness equals funny, according to liberals, we as the audience are made to watch it with them. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to show the literal pornography they created specifically for this show, but one of the movies they watch is a recreation of Homelander fucking Billy Butcher's wife while he watches. It's a cuckold fetish porn movie. This is how they rub the truth in your face while they gaslight you, telling you a completely different story with their words than they did as the audience. Oh no, she didn't have an affair, she was raped. Meanwhile, every other detail in the story points to the dark truth we all know is the real version of events. They know it's what we're all thinking, so they make us watch it anyway. Let me emphasize that they actually filmed their own porn scene specifically for this show. And the entire conversation afterwards is Huey and Lamplighter making jokes about being cuckolds.
Come on, I mean, do you want to be the cuck, or do you want to be the guy who fucks the wife?
If I see a single person doubting me on this, well, just make sure you lock your doors tonight. I was trying to avoid bringing this next bit up, but since the writers feel it necessary to keep drilling this into our heads, it needs to be mentioned.
His life is different. He has a mother.
They keep talking about how Homelander's son won't grow up to be a psycho like Homelander because he has a mother. Over and over throughout the show, they have incessantly repeated that same line. He has a mother. He needs a mother. Everyone in this show has at some point told a story about how absolutely perfect their mother was and how their father was the exact opposite. Everyone except for the black guy, Marvin, who had a good father. While that on its own could be fleshed out, I'll let you do the math because we've already covered plenty of similar material. In reality, children are more likely to become dysfunctional when raised in single mother households. They're more likely to commit rape and other violent crimes, more likely to be imprisoned, more likely to commit suicide, etc. And check out this next part.
You are lying to him.
Because I love him.
Is this a joke? Am I to assume that the writers believe a proper childhood is one shielded from the world and brainwashed in a soft ranch-style neighborhood so he grows up underdeveloped? The way they're writing this, any rational person would find her delusional, but because the writers themselves are so delusional and incompetent, Homelander is still the bad guy here, and they actually show him silently agreeing with her delusional thought process as if her mentality is the hard-to-swallow pill and not Homelander's. Alright, so just to recap, we've covered some feminist angles, racial angles, homosexual angles, ableist angles, and even national angles. Feels like something is missing here. Some big talking point the left ceaselessly harps on about. Oh, that's right. Gun restriction.
I'm Sheriff Ed Flanagan, and I'm here with Homelander to talk about school safety.
After episode 7's ending with everyone's head exploding, the authors thought it would be an ideal time to insert a bit of propaganda concerning gun control as well. A scene is shot depicting a super terrorist attacking a school, after which Homelander gives 3 basic, useless instructions, like locking the doors and waiting for a superhero to come rescue you. This is an obviously satirical bit portrayed through the liberal lens. The teacher in the skit has an authorized gun to use in case of this emergency, which the liberals writing this would like the audience to be shocked at and opposed to. While I certainly would not have wanted any of my teachers carrying a gun, it's not because of some visceral fear of firearms that the left seems to have. It's because all of my teachers were irrational, raving, liberal feminist women. The very thought of any of them having access to a firearm sends a shudder down my spine. And of course, despite how difficult it was even for Butcher to get in and out of the facility, this squishy suburban feminist who's been cooped up in a house for the past 8 years manages to evade the dozens of guards, as well as the dogs they are using to search for her, sneak through a gigantic drain pipe that the guards at this top secret facility are somehow unaware of, and make it all the way to Butcher's secret hideout in half a day. And like a good little puppy dog, once she informs him that Homelander has taken her and Homelander's son, he ditches all of his plans to find out where they are keeping the child of his wife's affair. Now they've got this kid reciting the states like some sort of lunatic coping mechanism.
North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon.
I mean, if this isn't proof of how mentally underdeveloped he has become from being stuck in a house his whole life, I don't know what is. It's only been a few hours, just give him some time to adjust. Besides, he's already 8 years old and showing signs of his own slightly developed moral compass. There's nothing they'd be able to do that would make him think like Homelander anymore. We skip ahead a bit to the gang after they steal Ryan back from Homelander's cabin, and Butcher announces he will betray Stan Edgar's deal, allowing both Becca and Ryan to escape. The only salvation awaiting straight white men in leftist media is to sacrifice themselves for the sake of their two-timing feminist wives and the children of their affairs. For no other reason than because the writers are the most uninspired, low-class bunch of degenerates ever to spawn. We are made to watch a tiny man climb inside the urethra of another guy's house-sized penis.
Get to the prostate.
Then while we watch him pet the inside of his urethra as if that would even be the slightest bit pleasurable, he sneezes and expands back to a normal-sized human, blasting the other guy to bits in a gory explosion. Why? Because completely meaningless sexual gore equals funny, you big dummy. Let's put this into perspective. We now live in a culture where the phrase white pride invokes a more violent reaction from people than a miniature guy walking into the house-sized urethra of another, pleasuring him from within, and then exploding him to bits when he sneezes. Marvin's baby mama traded him up for a liberal white man and pushed him out of the family. Starlight is assigned as the co-captain of Team 7, which is secretly the sole captain.
I am offering you real power.
An underlying, but still painfully obvious transition of power from the tyrannical straight white males to the infallible feminist women. Just as I mentioned in the Venom video, despite feminists' endless virtue signaling, they can't transcend their own egos, and so the Barbie white woman is given the leading position rather than a more fitting character for the leftist narrative, such as a black woman. And we are still playing this jealousy cat and mouse game with Huey and Starlight. Lovely. Did this fucking retard just burn toast in the toaster? How is that even possible? And as Homelander continues to build tension within his circle and harass the people around him, I can't help but look forward to when something actually cool finally does happen.
Of course, it doesn't hurt that the show's judge used to get cum drunk on your chorizo picante.
Homelander tries to ruin Starlight's reputation by making her sing happy birthday to him in a sexy way, but Stan Edgar, the virtuous black man, stands up to him in a show of heroism. Despite the fact that he runs the entire Vought shit show because he's a black man, the show never makes a point of how psychopathic or uncaring he would have to be to do all of that. No, instead, he is merely a helpless bystander at the mercy of corporate greed. And get this, After all the satirical, fourth wall breaking scrutiny of fake diversity in the media, the writers have Starlight pick the woman from Afghanistan as a supposedly most qualified next team member for the Seven. The Serpents have become so deranged that they are now eating their own tail. I'm having to stop myself from repeating this over and over because some of the retards watching still won't get it. The writers unwittingly engage in the same disingenuous, ideological, brainwashed nonsense that they are satirically criticizing in the same exact scene of the show.
She's the most qualified.
And meanwhile, we're supposed to pretend this predatory relationship between Stan Edgar and the superpower assassin girl he adopted is totally fine?
I would never let anything happen to you or Zoe. You know that, right?
Oh yeah, he's a black guy, so it's okay when he's a predator. As a matter of fact, everyone else is just so completely understanding. We've already gone over this, so I'm just gonna move on.
You are not a god. You are simply bad product.
I would say that at last, the underlying truth of the show finally reveals itself, but let's be honest, it gave it away long before now. On the one hand, this is a subtle allusion to slavery and viewing black people as products, or 3/5 of a person. The other half of this remark is a bit of a mindfuck, so let me explain. Part of the left's narrative is that white people put themselves on pedestals and treat themselves like gods while subjugating those they see as below them. What can I say? We do pretty well for ourselves.
Sorry for party rocking.
This message is a reminder of a psychological undercurrent that the left never wants to leave the mainstream narrative. That white people's privilege only exists because they have oppressed brown people. That the success of the race and its various cultures are gained at the expense of non-white cultures. This assertion becomes increasingly comical once you have actually left your woke American culture bubble and visited other countries. To the layman, the second half of that subliminal diss wouldn't have actually meant anything. But to those privy to the narrative, this is a clear-cut retribution on behalf of all left-appointed victim groups that have been marginalized by the evil straight white men. One of the core characteristics of leftism is this cult-like, if you know, you know, mindsets, where it almost feels like everyone's in on a joke except for you, and they won't fucking tell you. While initially only being a characteristic of high society academic snobs, it has now insidiously made its way into the mainstream groupthink of both sides of the aisle. It has expanded itself into the broader culture because of the woke leftist takeover of universities. A takeover that has been aided not only by the encouragement, but the normalization of college as a next step in young adult lives. The only reason for this shift is to keep people in the system longer. Its true goal certainly isn't the uplifting of low-income minorities either. Homelander is a straight, white, nationalistic male with the picture-perfect Aryan look, at least in the show, whose only power is derived from the good fortune of having been given the power he has through other people's hard work. Sound familiar? He is the very personification of the leftist narrative. White conquest is reframed as mindless cruelty, and Homelander's cruelty is reframed not as a lack of human affection, resulting in a growing resentment of humanity and a growing psychopathy within him, but instead as mommy issues. There is this super brain-dead reversal attempt at explaining away all male dysfunction as mommy issues. I say brain-dead because the logic behind it is literally, well, because women having daddy issues is such a popular trope, men I don't like must have mommy issues. I kid you not, that's the thought process behind it. And that's not even mentioning how brain-dead it is to explain away dysfunctional women as daddy issues. Many of the psychological problems most people would call daddy issues actually stem from their mother. They get passed off as having to do with men because we live in an age of female infallibility. Any deviation from the feminist dogma of inherent male malevolence, and inversely, inherent female benevolence, is grounds for reputation destruction. Check this next part out.
They had some tweets over the years he said were critical of Homelander, said he only wants team players.
The left is the side canceling people. Nobody on the right is doing that. The left controls all the media and Hollywood and big tech and all the rest of it. Yet here they are making up threats that don't exist, likening Homelander to Trump, Trump to Hitler, and white solidarity to Nazism. Then pretending that somehow white supremacists are the ones running around firing people for old tweets. You motherfuckers are doing that. How delusional could you be? This is why leftist appeasement doesn't work. Nothing you do will ever be enough because the very foundation of their ideology is victimhood. The moment they stop being a victim, the whole thing evaporates into thin air. Nothing you do will ever properly settle anything. There's always going to be something wrong with it, and they'll demand more.
We're tits deep in some random fuck pile.
Tits deep? What is that code for balls deep? Or maybe head first? Jesus, liberals and their lingo. By this point, my brain is so fried by the god-awful, jarring, unfathomably amateurish writing that I'm skipping through entire chunks of episodes until something catches my eye enough to watch it. I was not surprised, however, after everything we've seen so far, to find an entire episode dedicated to an orgy. Then there's this whole subplot about the white boyfriend of Marvin's wife secretly trying to brainwash their daughter by taking her to Homelander rallies, which the authors are obviously alluding to Trump rallies. I don't even...
All these years you weren't protecting me. I was protecting you.
Well, hey, alright. The first genuine moment of plot development. Not that it really matters, considering the show is just about over, but after 3 seasons, they managed to make something finally make sense in the show. And not long after, it ends. Well, that's gonna be it for this video. I need to end off before smoke starts coming out of my ears. Follow me on Twitter in case you haven't already. Like the video if you enjoyed, leave a comment down below. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell so that you get notifications when I upload. And I will see you all in the next video.